Welcome everyone to this Fitterfly meetup series, the first meetup we are doing at Fitterfly. And great to have you all over here. The topic for today's meetup is optimizing patient outcomes in your diabetes care practice. So India has a very peculiar characteristic when it comes to diabetes prevalence and how diabetes is prevalent in the country. There's a high prevalence, there's no doubt about that. Estimate range from 70 to 80 million. That's around 40% of the population having diabetes in the diabetes spectrum, diabetes, pre-diabetes. So that's a huge burden for us. Also, typically for India, the patient behavior and the kind of practice ecosystem we have, the challenges for professionals caring for people living with diabetes are very, very different. So to discuss on this particular topic, on how we as professionals caring for persons living with diabetes can optimize patient outcomes in our practice, we have three eminent speakers with us. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Tejal. Dr. Tejal is a gold medalist DM Endo from TNMC Mumbai. She's practicing at Fortis, Apollo and Cloud9 at Navi Mumbai. And I've heard her speak in multiple panels, multiple webinars, and she's got a lot of publications to her name. So welcome, Dr. Tejal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we have with us Dr. Chitra Selvan, who's not actually with us till now, so I'll just skip her introduction for right now. We also have with us Dr. Alok Modi. Dr. Alok Modi is a well-known physician and diabetologist in Navi Mumbai, practicing at his own hospital at Kevalya and also at Hiranandani Hospital. Again, with Dr. Modi has been a very, very old friend of mine, and we have spoken together, and I've moderated a lot of his webinars and presentations. So welcome, Dr. Modi.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, we would very soon have with us Dr. Chitra from Bangalore. She's kind of stuck in traffic right now as it's raining in Bangalore, and she said she'll join as soon as possible. But I'll introduce her to you all right now. Dr. Chitra is a DM Endo and faculty at MS Ramaiah Medical College in Bangalore. She's done her DM from PGI College, and she's an assistant professor and faculty at MS Ramaiah Medical College at Bangalore. A very patient-centric physician, if I may say so. So let me formally start this webinar with the questions and everything. But before I do that, let me set down a few rules so that everything goes smoothly for us. First down is that we will be starting with a few questions which I'll be asking the panelists to answer. If you have any questions during the talk, please ask your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we'll take up those questions in the end. Question and answers. During the question and answers, before you speak something, please ask the host to unmute you or raise your hand, and we'll give you a chance to come on screen and ask your question. So let's have it kind of smoothly today. And any questions in chat anytime, so you know that. So let's start with the first question now. Sir, I will start with you, Dr. Alok Modi. I have one question for you right now to start off with.
Yeah.
So, as a doctor caring for persons living with diabetes, like I said, India has very peculiar challenges. What are the main challenges that you face in your practice today?
Okay, first of all, Dr. Neelesh, warm thanks to you for a wonderful introduction, and a big welcome to all the delegates who are attending today's session, and equally my regards to the other eminent speakers, Dr. Tejal, who's there on the dais right now. So the challenges that I face, I'm practicing for 25 years, the challenges have changed with the times. When we had passed out, the challenges used to be predominant, and they're there today also, like patients not willing to take medications, not willing to take insulin, not sticking to their diet, not sticking to their exercise pattern. But today's challenges are a little different. With the boom in virtual technology today, with the ecosystem, a virtual ecosystem in the hands of every patient today in their own mobiles. Today, the challenges I face is people are sort of knowledged. They have their own Google knowledge, they have their own app knowledge. There are so many apps which are floundering in the Android ecosystem as well as the iOS. They are members of those apps and they are trained by, I don't know who are the kind of people who train them, but they are trained and they are knowledge about diet and about exercise and about sugar management with certain medications. And it's difficult to, sort of politely nudge them towards a scientific temper, to give them a scientific outlook towards management of diabetes. It's a little difficult to try to, give them counseling and patient education programs which we propagate on a scientific evidence-based medicine. So that is one challenge I face, especially with the educated people, especially the IT crowd. It's a little difficult for them to move towards a scientific evidence-based terminology and medications, approach. That is one thing. Second thing is that challenge which I see, it's very common today. We approach a patient, we are specialists, people come to us not with a naive diabetes or virgin diabetes. They come to us with nephropathies, retinopathies 10 years down the road and all. It's difficult to try to convince them that diabetes treatment is beyond sugar control. The standard of care that they look for is my fasting and my post-nut should be under control. They don't even think of post-dinner. They don't even think of 3 o'clock morning sugars. They don't like to think beyond the glycemic management as nephropathy, retinopathy, cardiomyopathy, heart failure. Those are the issues which become a little challenging, not because they're not willing to listen, but they're not aware. And their apps have not taught them these things. So it becomes a little difficult. A third challenge that I find, because I'm practicing very close to the allied class of people here, is people feel that lifestyle management is best done in big gyms. So the moment they go to these big gymnasiums and they're under a trainer, they feel they know how to build up their abs and how to take protein shakes and protein biscuits, and they can lose weight by various I'll quote and unquote, please mark it, so-called I'm not against this, but their ideas of intermittent fasting, which is ingrained on them by their gym trainers, personal trainers, many of them have like celebrities, building up abs and taking huge amount of protein shakes and exercising only on the treadmill, but not throughout the day, and not eating anything practically, but so-called junk food is sometimes acceptable. Those are little different kind of challenges, and especially you have to compete with the gym trainers and the apps. You have to try to it's difficult to tell them that we are the qualified doctors, and those are some of them. There are a big list of challenges. I think I should stop here. I should not cross my time. These are some of the challenges in modern diabetes practice today.
Right, sir. Dr. Tejal, your thoughts?
So Dr. Modi has spoken a lot about his challenges, but if you ask me, there's only one challenge that I would like to highlight, and that is time. Time is the biggest challenge I face. And, I often tell this to people, that when you just stop to think for just 1 second, all of us are doctors here, most of us. And, when you think about a person with diabetes sitting in front of you, you greet the patient, you listen to their complaints, you do a background on all their allied conditions. Do they have hypertension? Do they have cholesterol? You review their medications, you look at their reports, you decide what treatment to give, you type a prescription, you print it, you explain the prescription, you talk about lifestyle modifications. Just as I'm speaking this, you can imagine that in a busy clinic, how difficult it is going to be to complete all of this in one consultation. Right? So most of the time, what I feel is that as doctors, we tend to concentrate on the medical part of the consultation, mainly because of the constraints of time, though we would like to maybe devote more time for other things as well, but it's difficult. And just imagine that the patient has a urinary tract infection. So in this busy consultation, just attending to the UTI, the urinary tract infection, will take an additional 5 minutes. We talk about symptoms, we talk about antibiotics. So I think that is the biggest challenge for me, that in a busy clinic, how do I manage my time? And Dr. Chitra Selvan and I have done some work which we've published, where we surveyed about 1,000 doctors from across India. And most doctors said that the average time they spend with a new person who has developed diabetes is about 15 minutes. And somebody who's come for follow-up, it's barely about 5 to 7 minutes. So you can just think logistically the challenge it is to fit all the things that are important to discuss with the patient in that limited amount of time.
Interesting, Dr. Tejal. Dr. Chitra is here. Welcome, Dr. Chitra. We're all waiting for you. In fact, we started the webinar slightly late because of you. So, Dr. Chitra, what challenges have you been facing in your practice?
So I've been listening into what Dr. Modi and Dr. Tejal have to say, and I think if I could add another aspect of the challenge, we meet them every 3 months or so, okay? But there's like a whole 3 months in between the 2 visits, and I'm sure there are many questions that pop up, and I truly wish there was some way we could be accessible to them. So I think access is a very important challenge, and all the doctors present here do know that either giving away your WhatsApp number or your email ID is probably not a very viable solution for the volumes of patients that we see. But living with diabetes is challenging. You are going to have doubts which crop up in your mind about the everyday aspect of management. So can I take this tablet if I have fever? Do I have to reduce the dose if I'm not eating my food? And how do they ever contact Dr. Modi or Dr. Tejal or me to find out what's going on? So I think having access is also something which is a huge challenge, which will definitely improve patient outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Chitra. So what we have identified among the panel at least is the 3 main challenges that we have come up with is the amount of time spent on the patients and those persons giving out information and supporting them, amount of time spent there, the amount of unscientific information out there in the market, which might misguide these people into doing harmful things. And the third was access to doctors when they need it, access to information, medical information for patients when they need it. So these are the main challenges that we have identified among the panel at least. Now coming to the solutions to the challenges, would come to that. Dr. Tejal, so what do you think are the main solutions to at least these 3 challenges that we have identified?
So my answer is not going to be very popular, but my solution to the problem which I've devised for myself is I see less number of patients, because I feel that I should see the number of patients which I can do justice to, instead of cramming a whole lot of patients into a single day and not doing justice to any of them. Often they leave the clinic dissatisfied and discontent, which is not something which I think is very conducive to a healthy doctor-patient relationship. And I don't think that it has positive effects on outcomes. I think patients are very unlikely to follow my prescription when they aren't satisfied with the consultation. So one of the solutions that I have done now in my practice is I see lesser number of patients. The second thing that I do is that I have a nutritionist or a diabetes educator with me at all times. So those things which kind of maybe I miss or I'm not able to communicate, so my diabetes educator or nutritionist is there as a backup so that she can support me in making sure that we cover all that we have to cover for the patient. What Dr. Chitra said about access. So time we solve by seeing lesser patients and having somebody else to help who can give also some time to the patient. Access, I have a dedicated WhatsApp number which we share with all our patients, and we encourage them to drop messages to us as and when is required. Of course, we're very clear that it's not for an emergency, but yes, there are a lot of routine queries like Chitra highlighted which do come up, and we make sure that we are able to kind of troubleshoot for them, in the 3 months that they don't see us. A lot of patients don't require a very elaborate consultation. It's a routine follow-up. It's just maybe a fresh prescription. Then online consults help a lot. Another thing, about the non-scientific information. So I have a website where I've written in detail about my approach to diabetes. I've made a couple of videos about the frequently asked questions about type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, so that, some of what information I want to give my patients, they can access through the videos as well. So these are the solutions that mainly I have devised. And of course, I do use the support of a digital therapeutic program, which is the Fitterfly program. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it a little later in the webinar.
Thank you, Dr. Tejal. That was interesting. Dr. Chitra, your views on the solutions that you see to these problems, Dr. Chitra?
Yes, I have a robust setup of diabetes educator. So we have a phone line which is active in the hospital, which is attended to about 8 to 10 hours during the day, and it's buzzing all the time. So all your dose adjustments work there. I have a full-time educator and a nurse educator working on the line, and my care in my hospital at least will be incomplete without that line of help. And I think, as Tejal said, cutting down number could be one way of working with it. I also think trusting your patients and trusting the primary care doctor who referred the patient to you. So I set them free. I say, go back to your primary care physician and stay under their care. And if there is a roadblock again, which you need help with, come back to me, right? Also, some of our patients are very literate about their health, are very extremely capable of managing their diabetes by themselves, who might be short on time. So if you give them the plan and say, you know what, we finished your comprehensive workup today, and this is your annual workup. So if you can manage to get your HbA1c checked every 3 months and get that sorted by yourself, that's still a great plan. So you know that you tell them that if HbA1c is off above 7%, come back to visit. As long as it's under, it's okay, we'll meet again next year, right? So you could also maybe, I think it's an empowering thing to send them back to their primary care physicians. That way you help both sides of the story.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dr. Alok, your ideas on the solutions that we can have. I know you would have a lot of solutions in your mind.
I mean, ऐसा क्यों लगता है? Not a lot of solutions. I work in a little different manner. Of course, I have a dietitian and educator on board, and they work. But then I have realized that some of these patients want to talk to you. They don't go back satisfied. They need to communicate with you. So I devised a system many years back, which I'm following. Once in 15 days or in a month, I ask people to register, and I take out a Sunday. I spend around 2 hours with them. You could have seen those recorded sessions on Facebook and all. When I sit down and I just chat with them, I call it Chai Pe Charcha. I just sit down and chat with them and let them ask whatever they want to talk. Let them pour out all their grievances against insulin and drugs and cost of prescription and why Karele ka juice is better than Lauki ka juice and all that. Jo dil khol ke jo bolna hai bolo. And I take them, and what I realize in that, what really helps is see, 4 of us are talking today, right? There are a lot of things which are common in the way we are practicing. But then when we talk, there are many things that Dr. Chitra is doing and Dr. Tejal is doing, which I am doing, but I am not announcing it, and vice versa. But then when one person talks, others nod their head, yes. So what happens over there is one person comes out with this query and 20 heads nod. And the answer that I give satisfies all 50 of them. So in that way, my bond between the patient and myself increases. My interpersonal relations really take a new height. I get very loyal patients. They are very happy with this. And I have seen, people who were not taking GLPs and people who were not taking insulin suddenly start getting converted. They are very comfortable. And the beauty of these medications is I don't like to prescribe them, because you can write 50 prescriptions of semaglutide. It doesn't make sense after 1 month if only 1 or 2 of them are going to continue, for various economic and GI reasons or whatever. But when I initiate them over here, I get 3 more patients who come forward and say, doctor, it's okay. If it's expensive, I think it's a good drug. You please prescribe it for me also. So that is one way I do it. And second thing, like the other 2 eminent speakers spoke about, digital therapeutic plays a very big role. Today we have a good chunk of ecosystem friendly, services at our disposal, which unfortunately, which I always say in my national level conferences, some third parties, non-medical people are using it to float so many apps and, getting so much of business and getting so many patients and taking them on a path of diabetes management without having any idea of what diabetes care is themselves, But then we are not using it. Doctors are not so IT friendly. I don't know why. We have Fitterfly, and I've got some very good experiences with Fitterfly. I'm using it very beautifully and very happily with extremely good results. My patients who are in Canada and US are getting the weight reductions. They're getting the HbA1c down by 1.5 to 2 grams. And they are more happy than I am, They are happy, of course I'm happy. And the medications are reduced, So digital therapeutics has shown wonderful results. And I got pulled onto this by reading those articles by, the Livongo study, which was presented in ADA 2016. And Dr. Modi had presented his SMS exchange. And he showed wonderful results just by exchanging the data on SMS with their patients in South. Dr. Unikrishnan, I've seen, is doing a lot of work with his mobile patient management in Pune. So I really tried it out, and I could not have that kind of a system of my own. But Fitterfly walked in, and I get a dietitian, I get a counselor, I get an educator, I get a psychiatrist. I get such wonderful things in this digital therapeutic domain that you guys are running. And I've got good results, and they become like a parallel clinic for me without me, having to get a it's like a virtual clinic for me. And the beauty is my patient can be in Odisha and he can, he's approachable. But the third thing which I found very useful, somehow when you talk through Google or when you're there on Google, you impact greater on your patients than when you talk physically. So when I do teleconsultations, virtual consultations, like we are doing on Zoom right now, my patient is more ingrained to listen to my health advices than when they do it physically. You might find me stupid, but then it works. So I encourage my patients to
counter cultural, sir. That you actually prefer doing telemedicine and like these ideas. So I heard some interesting solutions over here. Group chats, group discussions with patients, getting patients together with one single doctor at the same time. It saves your time, saves the patient's time. They can learn from each other and from the doctor at the same time. Group chats, interesting solution.
And one more thing, if I can interrupt you, just one thing which I found, something which I find very good, it's very close to my heart. I love to refer my patients to certain endocrinologists and certain colleagues of mine. When I find a difficult case, I tell them, rather than you go for a second opinion, keeping me in the loop, keeping me out of the loop, keep me in the loop and go to a second opinion. Here are two names I'm recommending, So my patient has an email, will say, please meet Dr. Tejal. Bangalore, please meet Dr. Chitra. Take an opinion and then come back to me and please follow their advices. I find patient comes more reinforced and more trusting, and our interpersonal relations also improve. And I willingly send my patients, go for a second opinion to a colleague of mine and I get much better outcomes. That is one of the methods which I use.
Interesting. And I think it's a very good idea. Kind of a group practice, informal group practice. Dr. Tejal, you were the first person who mentioned this very interesting term called digital therapeutics. Digital therapeutics are basically evidence-backed software programs which help patients with or persons living with diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular diseases, various diseases, maintain their conditions, improve their outcomes, and get improvements in their lifestyle modifications. So, Dr. Tejal, could you tell me about your experience with digital therapeutics, and do you think it really helps your patients?
Okay, so it took me a long time to finally kind of get around to the idea of digital therapeutics, right? So I had been working as an advisor for Fitterfly, and we were helping to design the programs, design the content. But even still, at the back of my mind as a doctor, that kind of hesitancy is always there. And the reason is because doctors are always worried that whatever is shared with their patient should be scientific. It should be ethical and should maintain the confidentiality of the patient. Those are very important attributes that I require in anything that my patient comes into contact with. And I don't want any unscrupulous elements to interact with my patient. So for me, it took a very long time to actually get around to the idea of digital therapeutics until I was 100% sure that what I was using for my patients was not negative in any way, but was supportive for them. One other point I would like to make is of course that whatever you choose has to be scientific and ethical. The second thing is that digital therapeutics is not for everybody. So this doesn't mean that every person with diabetes needs to be referred to a digital therapeutic program. So for example, if I see 20 patients a day, Dr. Neelesh, so many of them are self-motivated. Like Dr. Chitra said, they're managing their sugars very well. They do SMBG, they titrate their insulin doses, they track their blood sugars, they follow their diet plan. So there are a lot of patients who are able to manage their diabetes on their own and are doing well. So it's not something that you need to foist on everybody. However, there are a lot of, very particular case scenarios where digital therapeutics helps a lot. The one which I like the most, where I think digital therapeutics is very useful, is a person who's newly diagnosed with diabetes. Because this is somebody who is scared, is desperate for information about their condition, is very afraid of starting medications, has no clue what lifestyle to do. You're starting from scratch and they really need that kind of support, which unfortunately I'm not able to offer in the clinic. So for a first diabetes consult, maybe I'll spend about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But as Dr. Chitra said, when patients go back home, so many things come up in their mind. Relatives say something, they read something. So I think for a newly diagnosed person with diabetes, digital therapeutics helps a lot to give them the right information in a staggered manner, not all the information all at once. Because what happens in the clinic, like if you see, I speak very fast. So when I speak, sometimes, I'm not even sure how much the patient is actually going to take in. He's already so anxious, and I'm giving a lot of this medical jargon. I'm talking about a lot of things. I don't even really know how much they're absorbing and how much they're going to retain. So for that reason, a newly diagnosed person with diabetes does very well with digital therapeutics. Another place where digital therapeutics in my practice has helped a lot is somebody who's on multiple medications for diabetes. Still, the HbA1c is not at goal and they're struggling. So this is somebody who needs help, who needs guidance, who needs support, who needs daily nudges, and needs that kind of, somebody to partner them in their journey in between doctor visits. So those patients do really well. Often, when I need to start insulin for a patient and they're extremely reluctant and say, doctor, you know what, मैं कुछ भी करूँगा लेकिन मैं insulin नहीं लूँगा. So then in this place where I know there's room for improvement in lifestyle modifications, and yes, if I can possibly help somebody avoid insulin, then I'm happy to do it. And this is somebody who does very well with digital therapeutics. HbA1c 8.59, you need a 2% drop. You put them on the program, they're very motivated because they don't want to take insulin, and it works like a charm. So these are maybe, some of my thoughts on digital therapeutics.
Interesting, ma'am. Dr. Chitra, you had mentioned that you already have a team of nutritionists counseling patients on the phone. You have a healthy hotline working. Do you still think that you need your patients need DTAs?
Yes, and I still have patients who get on to Fitterfly on my recommendation. And the reasons are many. The hotline functions during the day, and it can address only certain queries which have been defined by me, which my nurse educator and my diabetes educator can work. But there's also now lots of evidence to suggest that just the fact that you're logging in your food, logging in your steps or exercise, logging in your sleep hours is motivation enough for us to stay on track, right? Lifestyle changes are very difficult to make. That's exactly why we have entire streams of humanity and entire streams of science dedicated to how to effect behavior change in human beings, right? So that is a science in itself. And when Dr. Modi and Dr. Tejal and I consult with a patient in the clinic, we are only addressing the science of it. We are telling them do this, this, and this, but we are never breaking it down and explaining how to make the exact change. That nuanced approach is something that we can never do in a 15-minute consult or even a 30-minute consult. So what a digital therapeutic does is, one, bring awareness to your patient, because now they have to log their food, log their exercise. So you already know the day on which you might have missed your sleep, missed your exercise, and the effect that it has. So it's not like we don't know that if you miss your exercise and if you miss it, but when you see it happening on the log, and then you have to hold a conversation with a nutritionist, that kind of helps you connect the dots and say, you know what, it is happening. It looks like if I am serious about bringing this HbA1c down, maybe we'll need to address this. But I think the other important bit of this Fitterfly program, which truly excites me, is the physiotherapists on board, right? So for all individuals with diabetes, the only exercise which you and I do lip service to is say, go for a walk. And we don't know what else to tell to a patient who's already walking that 10,000 steps per day, right? All the doctors will agree on this platform today that we don't know what else to say, because we ourselves haven't been trained, because there is something called as an exercise prescription which is individualized to each patient, and that is something which needs to be progressively getting tougher and tougher so that our overall fitness keeps improving. There are various aspects to exercise. All of this is new. I learned while working with the Fitterfly team that there is something called as cardio, there's something called as strength, maybe we all know this, but there's something called as flexibility, something called as balance, there's something called as endurance. All of these are aspects of health which only a trained physiotherapist will bring to your patient's notice and make sure they progressively improve on those parameters. The third important aspect of a digital therapeutics, which I don't have in my hospital, is the role of a psychotherapist or a psychologist here on this team. They play two important roles. One, they screen you for stress, anxiety, depression, and sleep disorders, all of which are very common in individuals with diabetes. And everybody joining in today knows the connection between all these 4 parameters in blood sugar control. Yet, apart from saying, get more sleep, don't be more stressed, maybe meditate, we don't really give them pointers to improve upon these parameters. That's probably because we've not trained, but there are people who've been trained for this, right? So the psychologists on this program, and I have first-hand experience because my parents went on it and I've listened to my patient come back and tell me stories, screen you for all of this. And they also try and help you to understand or connect the dots between your stress and your trigger to overeat, when your lack of sleep and the need to overeat, the fact that you are having a bad day and the need to have a late night snack. So these are all important things to understand, which endocrinologists cannot touch at all during a normal consult, right? Because we are only thinking screening of the eye, statin, blah, 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 blah. We are on a whole separate league. But all of this are all undercurrents which contribute to improved outcomes. So I think these are all aspects of care which go beyond what you and I can do in the clinic, but these are all evidence-based. These are not mambo jumbos, and these are all truly improving the quality of life of people living with diabetes. HbA1c is just one parameter which you use to assess outcomes, right? But your patient important outcomes, the patient reported outcomes are you feeling relaxed while you're taking care of diabetes? Do you feel rushed and tense while you're taking care of diabetes? Those are questions that you and I do not ask because it's too uncomfortable to ask these questions because we know how bad the answers can be. So when we have the evidence and when we have all the trained people and when we know that collaboration is the key in diabetes management, why don't we provide the access to all the patients who are aware of it? I'm sure you'll have a set of patients who say, "Ye aap baat mujhe nahi pata hai, mujhe ye phone pe baat nahi karna hai," but you have a good set of patients who are willing to work on it, who want to feel on top of it, who want to be well while they're living with diabetes. So you provide them the access. So like Tejal said, it's not for everybody, but there's close to 30% of your patients who will do exceedingly well if you put them on to a platform like this.
Neelesh, can I just say one thing? So just to illustrate what Chitra said, just today I consulted a patient who was 48 years old and she came to me about 4 months ago with an HbA1c of 8%. And she was newly diagnosed with diabetes. She'd recently lost her spouse. She was struggling with grief and she knew that she was stressed. And she said, "Doctor, I will do anything, but don't put me on medication." And anyway, I wasn't planning to. So all I did is because I knew she needed something more than simply nutrition and exercise. She needed a lot of support from a psychologist to cope with the death of her husband. And I just put her on the program. Today she came back to me. She was thrilled. Her HbA1c was 6.3%. So she's gone from diabetes to pre-diabetes without any medications. She's now, I won't say she's happy, but she's kind of coping and managing to, kind of live her life in a reasonable manner, even after losing her husband. She's lost 5 kilos of weight, which makes her feel great about herself. A menopausal woman, perimenopausal woman, losing 5 kilos of weight is a big win. So, and I just feel that for the longest time when a patient sat down in front of a doctor and said, "Doctor, mujhe goli nahi lena hai," we doctors felt offended that somehow it invalidated us. But I always tell all doctors only one thing. If you were sitting in that chair and you had to start metformin, what would you think? You would have asked the same question of your doctor, that can I manage it without medication? Right? So I think empathy means, trying to walk in somebody else's shoes. And one day, I think, given our insulin resistance, all of us are also going to become diabetic sometime in future. And that's what we would want, right? We would want somebody to understand our world, understand our problems, and give us a solution which best suits what we need.
Right. Dr. Modi, what has been your experience with digital therapeutics, and what are the kind of patients do you put on DTX? You might have you have your own indications for choosing those patients. Would you share
Dr.
those?
Tejal and Dr. Chitra have covered it very beautifully. I'll put another perspective that I have seen. I've got these patients who are on different apps, individually available apps, and it's a tough nut to work with them. It's really a painful task to try to get them online. The moment I surrender these people to Fitterfly, I get very good results. Simple, short and sweet, wonderful outcomes, because now 4 people are playing their heads rather than me alone. So मेरा काम बहुत easy हो जाता है. I am very happy. That guy comes from a ferocious animal, a very tame pet animal, listens to my therapy, I get very good HbA1cs, microL comes down, retinopathy improves, very good thing. One scenario. Second scenario, you have these CEOs and CFOs of various companies, especially where I'm practicing here in the many state and all. They're running from one city to the other, having breakfast in Delhi, lunch in Madras and all. And these are the kind of guys, you can't let them stick to your dietitian. They don't even stick to your appointments, but they expect you to stick to their appointments. When they land up in a clinic, you better be available. So these are the kind of guys, and they are constantly on the mobile and on the laptop. Here, digital therapeutic works phenomenally well because they can connect when they want to connect. Here, my telecommunication works, teleconsultation works very well. They feel very much at home when I'm, even if I'm telecommunicating with them across the table through a laptop, they'll be more comfortable rather than talking to me physically. They are so used to their mobile and laptop in their hands. So it works very well, and digital therapeutic works very well. Third thing, Dr. Neelesh, I always have this query, when we cleared our 12th, we were some of the toppers in our respective boards, Maharashtra toppers, India toppers, and we chose PCB, so we got into medicine. Our friends chose PCM, that time when I passed out, and they chose engineering. I never understood why these IT guys and engineer guys keep marching into our domain, and they keep reading about medicine on Google, and they are more knowledge than us. But why doctors are not techno savvy? We were all supposed to be brains when we got into MBBS, and why we are so Harijan Jaisa, we don't touch laptops and mobiles. Why are we not techno savvy when our own friends are more doctors than engineers? Why are we not more engineers than doctors? So there is a big chasm, there's a big chasm of doctors not touching their technology domain and, not getting technology married into medical line. I think you covered it very well yesterday. That is one thing, and I enter that domain and I find very much at home working with it. Another thing which I want to point out, very important thing is, we'll get a little technical here. See, when we talk to patients, I get a lot of patients who come with their glucometer readings. These are unstructured SMBGs. They do it at their whims and fancies, and they say, look doc, 130 था, अभी 250 हो गया, अभी 100 हो गया, आप इंसुलिन ज्यादा दे रहे हो, कम करो. And उनको कितना भी समझाओ कि आप कभी भी शुगर करते हो, वो important नहीं होता, it doesn't carry sense. So वह SMBG करते हैं, that SMBG has to be converted on an Excel sheet. Most of them do not have these Bluetooth enabled glucometers. They don't download the app, they just keep writing it on a paper. Doesn't make sense. So when I land them up in Fitterfly domain, they either have to compulsorily undergo SMBG, a structured SMBG, or they do CGM. And when you take that CGM graph in front of you, and Fitterfly gives you the beautiful thing that they plot out your carb counting and calorie counting in a graphical format. They do that exercise thing. I'm coming to that. That's very important. One other point which I want to add to what Dr. Chitra said is, so when you compare these three Janam Patris, I call them Janam Patris, horoscope. When I show them their metabolic horoscope, I don't have to open my mouth. My patient says, yes, doc, I could see I underwent hypoglycemia because of this bad diet. Yes, doc, I agree with you. I've been taking this old-time insulin. So I can understand what you're referring to as the shoulder effect. I'm ready to switch to a second generation basal insulin. I don't want to take any names purposely over here. So I'm able to move them to the latest insulins by just showing them their reports. And when they see their diet chart, they see their CGM report or their structured SMBG graph. It speaks volumes, I don't have to even conduct 5 minutes training session with my educator. They are themselves very willingly, like you have a child, your own child who very willingly confides to you. Yes, Dad, I'm going to listen to what you say. They really confide in you, they talk to you, and I get such wonderful results. HbA1cs landing from 9.5 and 10, landing up to 7.5, which I could not achieve in 3 years. And like Dr. Tejal very rightly said, the naive, fresh diabetics, it plays a very important role. They are like lost buddies and need a Google map. This acts like a Google map for them. But my patients who are 10, 15 years down the road with brittle diabetes, with, I have people who have a lot of glycemic variability, a lot of hypos running into them. And these are the people whose HbA1cs are 6.5 and 7, but they don't realize that there is a lot of glycemic variability. They're very happy with their HbA1c of 7. These are the people which are very difficult to manage with medications. because you keep fluctuating the medications. It doesn't make sense. Their hypos don't disappear, their weight gains don't disappear. And these are the people who have got digital therapeutics working wonders on them. They work very well, and we have published papers together, and you have seen that we could get the HbA1c down in my set of patients from by 2 grams. We could get the weight down without SGLT2, without GLP by 5 kilos. So that's a wonderful thing. And my patients are really compliant. The hypos have come down, which makes me a very happy person. As a doctor, I feel very relished when I see my hypos of my patients have come down. And to add to what Dr. Chitra said, exercise is one of the most exploited era in medical science today. So many people are out minting money by so-called training unscientific forms of exercise. And by working in Fitterfly, the physiotherapists who are there, Dr. Nurada and all, what I've realized is they don't teach a lot about caloric burning, but they teach a lot of resistance training, which even if you go through the data, you realize plays a very important role in shaping up your metabolism. So you don't really have to huff and puff to get your insulin resistance down. This resistance training is something only a qualified physiotherapist can teach you. No gym trainer can teach you, as far as I know. And this has worked wonders in my patients. They don't run for 10 kilometers, they don't go for any marathon runs, but they lose weight and they get their HbA1c under very good control. And usse badi baat, their hypos and glycemic variability has come down. So these are some of the scientific points I wanted to touch, where digital therapeutics can play a role. Metformin cannot play a role. The sulfonylureas cannot play a role. Your insulins cannot play a role. We switch over to second generation insulin to prevent glycemic variability because there are true 24-hour basal insulins. But yet these things have given me better hypo management than even changing the therapeutic regimens. These are some of the observations I've had. I'll call it evidence-based observations with digital therapeutics.
Thank you, sir. Before I come to Dr. Tejal, who wanted to add something over here, there's a message in the chat that any of the doctors who are attending this particular meetup, if you want yourself or your patients or somebody in your family to have a trial of Fitterfly Digital Therapeutics program, please mention the name and the number of that particular nominee that you have, and we'll onboard the patient or the person who's living with diabetes and give them a 3-month free trial of Fitterfly Digital Therapeutics program. So, Dr. Tejal, you wanted to add something to Dr. Modi's talk.
Yeah, sir brought up a very important point about the strength training. So what, Dr. Chitra is aware of the data. So if she could just share with us, what, Dr. Chitra, we recently discussed some of the data, right, of how if you want, you could just add, I'll just say it. So what we found in the data that we have from my current patients and all of us is that people who were exercised more. They exercised more consistently. But what was very interesting is a lot of patients who were doing only aerobic exercise started getting converted to strength training. So I think about 40 to 50%, if I'm not wrong, the number, women who were doing only aerobic training now started to do strength training as well. And that's a huge contributor to the improvement in the glycemic control.
Interesting. So if we have so many doctors who have witnessed the startling transformation in their patient outcomes with digital therapeutics, why aren't more and more doctors using it? What is this fear holding them back? Or is it ignorance? Is it fear? I don't know. Somebody, Dr. Chitra, why are doctors not using DTX more for their own patients?
Anything new is scary, right? Anything new is scary for everybody. All change is scary, and doctors are no different. And doctors are traditionally used to this almost obsessive nature of relationship with their patients. With my patient, your patient. I think those are all reasons. But I think it's important for all digital therapeutic companies to be clear that they are there to support the main work which is done by the doctor, and that there are no in-house doctors who are trying to coach your patient away from you, and that at least in Fitterfly I can speak for that your coaches who are your diet experts and diet nutritionists will come back to discuss any change in medication or dose of insulin with the main physician if you would want that, if you would like that, right? And keep you in the loop on all the changes which are going on. Or if you want to be only contacted once after 3 months, at the end of it, so you can do that. So you will still have the option of getting at at the start of the program, report of your patient after your coach and nutritionist and physiotherapist have met with the patient. You can also get a midterm report if you choose to. You can also get a 15-day CGM report. You can bring in your insights, right? And you definitely will get an end of program report. So I think that is something which is important for all physicians who are putting patients onto the program to realize. But I also think that one thing which holds people back is a lot of apps also peddle misinformation. I think that's where the main fear comes from. We have many people who've done mango only diet, right? Who do only fat and protein, and fat and protein they would do maybe fried meat from outside, and then they come back with triglycerides, which are, all of us will have stories about how, things like this which are peddled, which are popular on social media, and then patients go through it and then come back with sugars which are very high or come back with complications. I think that is the main fear, because at the end of it, while we may all be like my patient, your patient, everybody cares deeply about their patient. They want only the best thing for their patients. They do not want their patients to fall into the wrong hands. So I think it's important for all doctors to understand that everything that is practiced on this digital platform at least is completely evidence-based and scientifically done. So there are no fad diets that are being followed. There are no dramatic changes which can metabolically upset your patient's health or that they'll land up in decay. So there are no such things happening. Whatever is practiced is absolutely what you would recommend in your own prescription. I hope that helps. I'm looking at Dr. Modi for his input.
Yeah, we have a question from Dr. Shambhu Datta. Dr. Shambhu, please wait for the last few minutes before we come to your question. Dr. Modi, yes, what do you think are the main fears?
Madam, I'll Dr. Neelesh, sorry about that. I'll answer this in one simple line. If you don't mind me, I'll deviate from the whole thing and I'll answer it in a very simple way. Why doctors are not coming closer to digital therapeutics is it's the noise level. When there is a new drug in the market, when SGLT2 was launched, how many of us were keen for SGLT2? When GLP was launched, how many of us were keen? We were more scared of pancreatic cancer, C-cell carcinoma, we were scared of genital infection. Till the pharma companies made a lot of noise with literature. Look, it's not there. Today we are writing it left, right and center. Forget us. Today cardiologists are writing it for non-diabetics. Nephrologists are writing it for non-diabetics. So it's a noise level. If digital therapeutics is not making a noise today, it's because the people who are profounders of it are not making noise. It's that simple as that. The people don't look at things which don't create a noise. Why the political system runs in this country very happily? Why the apps which are not run by qualified medical people are minting money and they have captured the crowd in the market? It's because they are making a lot of noise. So people are not aware. How much is the awareness to doctors? You ask them, what is digital therapeutics? How many of them are even heard the word called digital therapeutics? Because nobody is telling them. It's as simple as that. So unless you create enough noise in the market, because after all, at the end of the day, you get your qualification, you get your degree, you're fully trained to treat a patient. But unless your hospital advertises, look, we have this wonderful consultant on the panel and talk high and mighty about you, how will patients come to you? So how much noise are you taking in the market? That is all. I won't take any names over here for obvious reasons, but there are 2 low molecular weight heparins. I attended one of the talks on a Sunday in JW Marriott by one of the gentlemen who is supposed to be the father of Telmisartan. And we asked him, sir, why are you talking about this low molecular weight heparin today when brand A is very well established in the market? He says it's very simple. Both are exactly similar. There is no difference. It's just the same. The second company today has realized that they were sleeping so far and the business has been captured by brand A. So now they're waking up and they're making a lot of noise so that so we can capture some share. So it's just that we are not making enough noise about what the benefits of digital therapeutics are. Today is a very good thing that you people are doing. We are educating our colleagues about it. The more noise you make, the more data you present, the more literature you show, the more evidence-based medicine you present, more people will get drawn to. What I like about digital therapeutics is there is no side effects, there are no adverse events, there are no complications, there is no therapeutic window, right? You won't say, if I give this drug, there would be an adverse reaction, or you can cross the dose and have complications. यहाँ पे आप कितना dose cross करोगे? यहाँ पे आपको क्या complication होगा? At the most, it will not work, but in what way will it harm your patient? It will not harm your patient in any way. So if somebody wants to take, people who are running digital therapeutics without being qualified for it are not harming their patients.
Right.
They're at the most not treating their patients. So that's it. We're not getting enough noise. We need to have a lot of noise about the benefits of this new modality of therapy, and I'm sure it will gain ground.
Dr. Alok Modi, we had done this webinar a couple of days back where we noticed that ignorance among doctors is one of the main reasons that DTX is not taking off. Dr. Tejal, what are your thoughts? Why don't doctors prescribe DTX programs like Fitterfly or similar evidence-based programs?
I think what you summarized, I think, is perfect. They're just scared and wary because, on a daily basis, we are inundated with the pharma industry, with their representatives literally hounding us day in and day out. So when one more representative from, a program or, a digital therapeutic program comes to them, I think that mental bandwidth is just not there to hear them out and, actually just listen to them. But there's one thing I would like to say to the doctors who are listening to us, that what we need to acknowledge as doctors is that patients are looking for an alternative. They're already looking for something to help them. And I think as a doctor, instead of being on the boundary or on the fence about a digital therapeutic program, you could take the responsibility of guiding them to a program which is scientific and ethical. So for the longest time, patients say, main ye kar lu, main wo kar lu, and you're like, I don't know, maybe tum dekh lo. Like, patients ask us, hum Ayurvedic kha le kya, hum homeopathic kha le kya, and we're on the fence. So I think with digital therapeutics, this is technology, this is here to stay, it's not going away. So instead of playing defensive, we go on the offensive and we help our patients to choose a program which does not take them for a ride, which is not unscientific, and helps them to improve their diabetes. So I think we're just waiting for the penny to drop, doctors, that digital therapeutics technology is here to stay, whether you like it or not, whether you get on the bandwagon or not. But I think it's important to get on the bandwagon and help our patients negotiate this landscape and help them to get something which is scientific and ethical.
Thank you, Dr. Tejal. I think it was very informative for all of us. I hope many of the fears are laid to rest. So I'll now go to the questions. We have a few minutes. I'll take the question we have right now. Plus, if anybody else has any other questions, please put it in the chat window Q&A and we'll answer those questions. So the panel has the first question in front of them. Can you read the question, all of you? So this is a question by Surgeon Captain Dr. Shambhu Datta. Welcome, Dr. Datta. So his question is, the tech-savvy glucose management is not going to work in a government hospitals, where we see much more patients daily, possibly 10 times, and most of them don't have a smartphone. So his question is about access of the general public to technology as such. What would you like to say? I would start with Dr. Alok this time.
For the first question, you mean? For the government hospital?
Yes.
I don't think that's impossible. If we think like that, then we can never launch the program. In fact, these are the places where these programs are more highly required, because these are the places where more complication-generated diabetic patients would be there. So it's not like how we do it in private practice, where we do it on a one-to-one basis. This is something where, if you're interested, I'm sure the organization like Fitterfly can have a full team sitting over there. Just as there is a team of doctors seeing all those patients, it's not one doctor which is clearing the OPD, right? I've also got my MD and MBBS from a government hospital. I've seen 200 to 300 patients in an OPD on a daily basis, where the flow was more than 1,000 patients a day. So we are used to that. So it's not difficult. So you have a team of people who are going to sit physically there and get these people registered and have a full team dedicated to a government hospital, so it can work. And those are the logistic issues. Those are not impossible issues. And they're very much possible if you have a bandwidth and you talk with Fitterfly, and I'm sure they can work on something. It's a purely logical issue. So I don't think that is impossible. Or if you think that all patients cannot be covered, and like Dr. Tejal said, it is not meant for all patients.
It is not for everyone.
Yeah, even in a private practice, it's not that every patient who walks in, I'm referring them and getting them on board Fitterfly. ऐसा नहीं होता है. There are certain patients, you have to have your own criteria. Just as you don't write metformin for everybody, you don't write SGLT2 for everybody, you don't choose a glimepiride for everybody. You have certain evidences and criteria on which you choose out your prescription. So you need to have your own criteria and you have to understand where I will be using digital therapeutics. And that is best handed over to the team which will be sitting in the government hospital. Give them a chance, let them work, see, till you work it out, how do you know what would the results be? Run a trial, let the program run and then see. I feel even if out of 100 patients, if only 20 patients are going to get the benefit, यदि आप 20 पेशेंट्स का हाइपोस बचा सकते हो, फ्यूचर में डायलिसिस बचा सकते हो, कोरोनरी इनसफिशिएंसी बचा सकते हो, I think it's worth it, isn't it? Even if you can save the life of one patient in your lifetime, I think it is worth it. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. Dr. Datta, in case you want to see how Fitterfly can help you execute DTX programs in a government hospital, please get in touch with me. You have my email ID and we can always discuss and find out ways to actually take DTX to the maximum public because it can help a lot of people. There's another question from Dr. Shambhu again about affordability, that even insulin is very difficult for people to afford. So we should be practical. Dr. Tejal, it's the same question about affordability and practicality of the idea. What would you say?
Dr. Neelesh?
Please, Chitra, go ahead.
Yes, please.
I completely get where you're coming from, Dr. Datta. All of us trained in government medical colleges, and we know the crazy number of patients who attend our OPD, close to maybe 600 to 800 patients per day. And I do completely understand that. We might not be able to get everybody to pay for a program like this. But if you are maybe in the planning commission for, let us say, how to deal with NCD, and now NCD is a national program by itself. And if you are going to make a plan, these are aspects of care that probably you and I should take care. You don't need to have every person to have a smart mobile for them to have access to this information. If there is one smart mobile per family, we can still get the job done. And what this means is that you don't have to come to a private platform like Fitterfly and get your patients on it, but you could use the principles of this and draw from this and maybe make your own version of educational material, put up a QR code for your patients to scan. You will be amazed at how well even patients who don't have a smartphone are savvy enough to access that information. That's how penetrative social media is, and that's how fantastic information about remission of diabetes travels in the world of our patients. And that's a world that we don't know enough about and that we don't want to look at it apart. But if you just do an honest poll of your patients, the number of patients who are looking to make diabetes go away, diabetes prevention, stop medication, stop insulin, there might be less than 30% of people who have not accessed information or searched for this information on Google at some point in their life. So this is to understand that just because we don't have the tools at a larger scale like that doesn't negate the effect of these interventions in the management of patient outcomes. How can we read from the evidence that has been developed from this platform and make it more accessible to large groups of people? Because soon we are going to be one of the largest countries, right? So I think the way to look at it is try and see how your team can maybe make it more accessible to your people and not necessarily get everybody to pay and get on this particular platform.
Very, very well put, Dr. Chitra. I totally second that. You don't have to come to a paid platform like Fitterfly. As long as you absorb the basics of digital therapeutics and use it in a practice to help maximum patients. That's what we're looking for, best outcomes for maximum number of patients. Dr. Tejal, some last thoughts before I try to move towards closing the session?
Are there any more questions? No, we're done with the questions, right?
Yes, we're done with the questions. Unless somebody wants to add one last minute question, we are done with the questions.
Yeah, so I completely agree with what Dr. Chitra says, that just because as of now at this state we're not able to offer it to everybody doesn't mean that the intervention is not valid and it's not useful and it will not have impact. I wish that people on this webinar had enough power to make it available to everybody, but I think that wherever you are, in whatever setting you are, we do the best for our patient. So in private practice, in clinics, if we can use digital therapeutics to aid our patients, great. If you are in a public hospital, we wait for the future and we hope that the government and the people in power do come up with better alternatives.
Thank you, Dr. Tejal. So I think we overshot by a couple of minutes. So if there are any questions, I would ask the persons to share those questions so that we can take up those questions. And if we do not have any more questions, I would like to move towards closing the session. Thank you, Dr. Tejal. Thank you, Dr. Chitra. Thank you, Dr. Alok, for taking out the time to come for the session. Dr. Chitra, I know you really huffed and puffed at the end to actually make it in time. So a special thanks to you. Thank you to all the doctors who are in the attendance for sparing the time on a Saturday evening, 1 full hour to listen to us. And it's great to know that not a single attendee left us throughout the 1 hour. All who were here stayed with us throughout the session. So thanks a lot, everyone. If you have any more questions, all of you have my email ID. You can just email it to me and I'll help you out with whatever questions you have. So once again, thank you, everyone. Jai Hind.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Dr. Modi. Bye, Dr. Chitra. And thank you, everyone, for a patient listening.
Bye, Dr. Tejal, Dr. Chitra, Dr. Neelesh, and wish you all a lovely weekend to all the people who are watching today.